The wind howled over the stone courtyard of a sprawling mansion that once held the laughter of a family, but now echoed with silence. At the edge of the property, sitting quietly beneath a decaying oak, was a frail, old man. His coat was torn, his shoes worn down to the sole, and his face weathered by years of sun and struggle. To anyone passing by, he looked like a forgotten beggar, a man clinging to life's edge. But this was no ordinary man. This was Alonzo Hargrave, one of the wealthiest and most respected elders in the city. And his disguise was deliberate. For years, Alonzo had watched his only son, Adrian, grow into a capable man, handsome, educated, respected by many. Yet Adrian carried a stubborn wound in his heart, one that kept him from marrying. Time and again, women were introduced to him, women of class and wealth, but he pushed them away. To him, all he saw in their eyes was greed, hunger for his family name, and the glitter of gold. And so Alonzo, desperate to see his bloodline carried on, devised a plan so unthinkable that it bordered on madness. He would shed his riches, his power, and his name, and walk the streets as a beggar, all in search of a woman who could love his son not for wealth, but for the man he truly was. The plan began on a chilly autumn morning. Wrapped in rags, his beard unkempt, Alonzo took to the market square, where the wealthy came to shop and the poor came to beg. He positioned himself near the baker's stall, where the scent of warm bread drifted through the air, and waited. It wasn't long before the whispers began. Another beggar. Another mouth. Move along. The rich sneered, their silk shoes stepping deliberately away from him. But Alonzo didn't move. He was watching. He was testing. He was waiting for something. Someone different. Before we go any further, if this is your first time watching one of our videos, we'd love for you to hit that subscribe button. Your support means the world to us and helps us keep bringing you stories just like this one. The day passed slowly, but then she appeared. A young woman with a tray of fruit in her arms, dressed plainly, her apron dusted with flour. Her name was Elena, a waitress from the small tavern by the river. Unlike the others, she didn't turn away when she saw the old man shivering in the cold. She stopped. She bent down. And with a kindness that could not be faked, she said softly, "Sir, are you hungry?" She handed him a warm roll, the last one from her tray. No hesitation, no calculation, just compassion. Alonzo's eyes, hidden beneath the shadow of his hood, flickered with something rare, hope. He murmured his thanks in a raspy voice, taking the bread as though it were treasure. But what Elena didn't know was that in that moment, she had already been marked as the beginning of something far greater than herself. For Alonzo wasn't merely looking for kindness. He was looking for truth. And he suspected, deep in his bones, that this young woman might be the one to change his son's life forever. The days turned into weeks, and Alonzo continued his charade. Sometimes he sat near the tavern steps, watching Elena move swiftly between tables, serving food, wiping spills, enduring the harsh words of patrons with grace. Other times, he would ask her for nothing, simply testing her eyes, her patience, her willingness to see him as more than a nuisance. And each time, she proved herself without knowing she was being watched, judged, and weighed by one of the city's most powerful men. But with every passing day, the stakes grew higher. For Alonzo was not the only one watching. Jealous eyes in the tavern had begun to notice Elena's compassion. Greedy minds whispered of opportunity. And fate, like a storm brewing on the horizon, was about to turn the simple kindness of a waitress into a story of betrayal, greed, and a courtroom battle that would shake the city to its core. The tavern by the river became the stage where lives unknowingly intertwined. Elena continued her days with little thought of the beggar who lingered nearby, though her compassion never faltered. She shared bread when she could, offered water when the sun burned too hot, and even once left a blanket folded neatly beside him after a stormy night. To her, these were small acts of humanity. To Alonzo, they were revelations. But while he saw light in her, others saw weakness to be exploited. Marcus Vayner, the tavern's owner, was a man whose smile was as crooked as his accounts. Known for cutting corners and skimming coins, he carried a lust for wealth that knew no bounds. He watched Elena with eyes that calculated, not cared. She was a good worker, yes, but too gentle, too giving. In Marcus's world, kindness was a liability. And when he noticed how often she spared bread or coin for the ragged beggar outside, he sneered to himself. "Foolish girl," he muttered. "One day, that bleeding heart will cost her everything." Marcus wasn't wrong about the danger, but he didn't yet realize how entwined his fate would become in hers. One evening, as the tavern filled with the drunken roar of sailors, a new figure entered. He was tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a fine coat despite the humble setting. His name was Victor Halden, a lawyer of notorious repute. Smooth-tongued, sharp-minded, and merciless, Victor thrived on finding weaknesses of businesses, of people, of hearts. He was a vulture in human form, circling opportunity. Marcus welcomed him with a forced grin, pouring him ale on the house. "Always a pleasure, counselor. What brings you down to our side of the river?" Victor's eyes scanned the room before settling on Elena as she worked quietly in the corner. He smirked. Business. And perhaps pleasure. It began with small gestures, coins slipped onto her tray, words of false praise whispered in her ear. But Elena, though kind, was not naive. She knew when eyes lingered too long, when flattery was a mask. She deflected with polite distance, which only fueled Victor's determination. For men like him, rejection was not a boundary, but a challenge. Meanwhile, Alonzo watched all of this unfold from his corner. The lawyer's gaze, the tavern owner's greed, the sailor's rowdy remarks. It all painted a picture of a world that Elena navigated daily with dignity and tact. And Alonzo's conviction deepened. This was the woman his son needed. Strong yet gentle, principled yet forgiving. But how could he bring them together without shattering the illusion he had created? His chance came unexpectedly. One fateful evening, Adrian himself walked into the tavern. He had come not as the wealthy heir he truly was, but simply as a man seeking escape from his responsibilities. He wore plain clothes, nothing that would betray his status. When he sat at a corner table, and Elena came to take his order, their eyes met, and something wordless passed between them. She smiled warmly, not recognizing his name, not knowing his lineage, seeing only a weary traveler. And for the first time in years, Adrian felt the weight in his heart ease. Yet fate is rarely kind to those who begin to hope. Marcus saw the spark and narrowed his eyes. Victor saw the same and smirked like a predator spotting prey. The two men exchanged a glance, an unspoken agreement forming between them. If Elena could catch the interest of this mysterious stranger, she was worth more than just her wages. She could be used, manipulated, controlled. And so, the plot began. Whispers spread that Elena was unfaithful, that she lured men with her innocent act, that she was not the saint she appeared to be. Marcus planted rumors among the patrons, while Victor, with his legal cunning, began drafting contracts and false claims, preparing a snare of debts and accusations that could ruin Elena's name if she resisted their control. Adrian, unaware of the storm gathering, continued to visit the tavern. His bond with Elena grew in quiet moments, a laugh shared over spilled soup, a story exchanged about childhood dreams, a glance that lingered too long. But behind them, shadows lengthened. And Alonzo, still disguised as a beggar, felt the unease in his bones. He had set out to test the purity of a woman's heart, but now he saw danger circling her, danger that could destroy not only Elena, but his son as well. The game had begun. And soon, it would escalate into betrayal so deep that it would not only test love, but drag them all into the cold, unforgiving light of a courtroom, where lies and truths would clash like swords. The storm broke on a night thick with rain. The tavern, dimly lit and crowded, was suddenly filled with the heavy boots of city guards. Their leader carried a parchment, stamped with the seal of the courts. His voice cut through the chatter like a blade. Elena Marin. By order of the magistrate, you are hereby summoned to face charges of theft and fraud. The room fell silent. Trays clattered, mugs froze mid-air, and every eye turned toward the young waitress, who stood frozen in disbelief. Fraud? Theft? She whispered, her voice trembling. There must be some mistake. But there was no mistake, not in the documents Victor Halden himself had prepared, not in the testimony Marcus had poisoned with lies. Together, they had crafted a snare so intricate that even innocence looked like guilt. A ledger was produced, showing missing coins. Contracts appeared, forged but stamped convincingly, claiming Elena owed debts she never signed for. And behind it all, Victor's smug smile lingered like the stench of rot. Adrian rose from his seat, fury in his eyes. This is absurd. She has done nothing wrong. But the guards shoved him back, their orders clear. Elena would stand trial. And so she did. The courtroom was a cavern of stone and judgment, where whispers echoed like thunder. Elena stood at the center, pale but unbroken, her hands clasped tightly before her. Marcus testified with feigned sorrow, lamenting how she had abused his trust. Victor, smooth and calculated, presented his case with rehearsed eloquence, weaving lies into a tapestry that made even the magistrates nod. Adrian sat among the spectators, his heart in pieces. He wanted to shout, to strike Victor down where he stood, but every time he opened his mouth, another witness was brought forth, another document laid down, another false nail hammered into Elena's coffin. And in the shadows, the beggar sat quietly, his hood low, his face unreadable. Alonzo watched with a heavy heart, every fiber of his being crying out to reveal himself, to use his power and wealth to crush the lies. But he had built this trial, this test, this stage. He had wanted to know the truth of hearts, and now he had it, raw and brutal. But the truth was more dangerous than he anticipated. When Elena finally spoke, her voice did not tremble. I have stolen nothing. I have lied to no one. If my crime is kindness, then so be it. But I will not bow to greed and deceit. Her words rang through the hall, and for a moment, silence held. Victor's smirk faltered, but only for a heartbeat. He leaned forward, producing his final weapon, a sealed letter, allegedly from Elena, promising to run away with a mysterious traveler who turned out to be none other than Adrian. Gasps filled the court. The implication was clear. Elena not only stole money, but sought to ensnare a wealthy man under false pretenses. Adrian shot to his feet, his voice shaking with rage. That is a lie. A forgery. The magistrate banged his gavel. Silence in the court. And then the unthinkable happened. The beggar rose. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped forward, the scrape of his worn shoes echoing across the chamber. The crowd parted in confusion as the ragged figure made his way to the front. The magistrate frowned. Who is this? Remove him. But before the guards could act, the beggar straightened his back, pulled away the hood, and let the mask fall. Gasps erupted as recognition spread. The frail old man transformed into Alonzo Hargrave, the patriarch, the tycoon, the man whose name commanded power in every corner of the city. I will not remain silent, Alonzo thundered, his voice carrying the weight of years and authority. This young woman is no thief. She has more honor in her little finger than all the liars in this room combined. The court trembled. Marcus's face drained of color, Victor's jaw clenched, and Adrian stared at his father in disbelief. The beggar was no beggar at all. But Alonzo was not done. He revealed everything. The disguise, the test, the weeks of watching Elena's kindness when no one else cared. He turned to the magistrates, his eyes blazing. If she is guilty, then so am I, for I begged at her feet. And in her mercy, I found truth. A truth none of you, blinded by greed, could see. The hall erupted in chaos. The magistrates whispered urgently among themselves, the crowd shouted, and Victor's carefully woven web began to unravel thread by thread. But the battle was not over, for Victor, humiliated and cornered, was not a man to retreat quietly. His pride was wounded, and with it came fury. And so, in that cavernous courtroom, as rain battered the city outside, the stage was set for the final confrontation. One that would not only decide Elena's fate, but test the bond of father and son, expose betrayal at its deepest, and reveal whether love could truly withstand the weight of deception. The court was in uproar. Whispers rushed like wildfire through the chamber. the shock of Alonzo Hargrave's revelation shaking the very foundation of the proceedings. The magistrates struggled to restore order, their gavels pounding against wood in vain. Victor Halden, though momentarily rattled, stepped forward with venom in his eyes. "So this is your game, old man? Dressing as a beggar, manipulating the girl, spinning tales of charity to deceive us all? You are not a witness. You are the trickster who orchestrated this charade." Alonzo's gaze burned into him. "No, Victor. I am a father who has seen through your lies. You preyed upon innocence, forged contracts, twisted truths. But the truth," he pointed toward Elena, standing with quiet strength, "is that she gave without expecting anything in return. She showed compassion when none else would. That is not fraud. That is humanity." The magistrates demanded evidence. And Alonzo, prepared, summoned his own. From beneath his cloak, he revealed the journal he had kept during his weeks in disguise, detailed notes, witnesses who had seen Elena's kindness, small merchants who confirmed she often paid for others out of her meager wages. He called forth Adrian, who testified with raw emotion, recounting how Elena never once sought his name, his wealth, or his future, only his company. The tide shifted. Murmurs of doubt now turned toward Marcus and Victor. Cornered, Marcus stammered, his rehearsed lies faltering under the weight of scrutiny. Sweat poured down his brow as the magistrates pressed him with questions. And then, like a collapsing wall, the truth broke free. I was promised a share," Marcus shouted, pointing a trembling hand at Victor. "He said if I testified, if I went along with it, I'd be free of my debts." The chamber erupted. Gasps, shouts, accusations. Victor's composure cracked, fury twisting his face. He tried to speak, to turn the tide again, but the magistrates had heard enough. With a commanding voice, the presiding judge declared, "Victor Halden, Marcus Vayner, you stand accused of fraud, perjury, and conspiracy. Guards, take them away." The courtroom shook with the roar of the crowd as the villains were dragged out, their protests drowned beneath the weight of justice. And in that moment, silence fell again. Elena, tears brimming in her eyes, turned to Alonzo. "Why? Why would you do all this? Pretend to be what you are not, test me in such a cruel way?" Alonzo's face softened, his voice heavy with years of longing. "Because I have seen my son's heart broken by greed. I feared he would never know love for who he is, only for what he owns. I had to be certain, Elena, that love could still exist without gold or title. And you proved it." Adrian stepped forward then, his voice breaking. "Father, all this time?" "Yes," Alonzo whispered, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "And now, my boy, you know the truth too." Adrian turned to Elena, his heart laid bare. "I don't care about the trials, the lies, the cruelty of others. I only care about you. You saw me when I was no one, and that means more than all the wealth my family name carries. Will you stand with me through whatever comes next?" Tears fell freely down Elena's cheeks, but her smile shone like sunlight breaking through clouds. "Yes, Adrian, I will." The chamber filled with applause, not of obligation, but of genuine relief and joy. Justice had prevailed. Love had triumphed. And an old man's gamble had borne fruit. Weeks later, as the mansion once again filled with warmth, Alonzo sat beneath the oak tree where his disguise had begun. This time, he was not a beggar, but a father at peace. The laughter of Adrian and Elena carried across the courtyard, filling the air with the very sound he thought he might never hear. Hope renewed, legacy secured, love made real. He closed his eyes, whispering to himself, it was worth it. And so, dear friends, remember this. True love will never be fooled by rags or dazzled by riches. It will see the heart, and only the heart. That is where the greatest treasure lies. Dear viewers, what lessons did you take away from this dramatic tale? We'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed the story, give us a thumbs up, share it with friends, and hit that subscribe button. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss out on our latest updates. Thanks for watching, and stay blessed.